You know, some days just change everything. For one small town in the American heartland, a single Tuesday in December completely flipped its world upside down. So today, we're going to dive into the story of the largest workplace immigration rate in U.S. history and see the deep, lasting mark it left on a community. So let's go to Worthington, Minnesota. Population just over 11,000. At first glance, it looks like your classic small American town, built around farming and a little bit of industry. But back in 2006, it was about to find itself at the very center of a national firestorm. On that day, December 12th, federal agents descended on the town. And this wasn't just some small operation. It was a massive coordinated action across 6 different states, and it ended up being the largest immigration enforcement event of its kind ever in U.S. history. But before the raid, before all the chaos, it was a day that started out like any other. So let's kind of rewind a bit and set the scene for what life was like in Worthington right before everything changed. This right here is the Swift & Company meat processing plant. Now, for Worthington, this wasn't just a factory. This place was everything. It was the economic engine of the entire town. We're talking about a massive $8 billion business that employed a huge chunk of the community and brought in a really diverse workforce from all over. And what's so striking about this particular day is the timing. For the town's vibrant Latino community, December 12th wasn't just another Tuesday. It was a sacred, holy day, the Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe, a day for celebration, for reverence, and that peaceful, festive vibe. Well, it's just such a stark, brutal contrast to what was about to happen. Okay, so the sheer scale of this whole thing, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. Let's just look at the numbers for a second, because they really tell a story. First up, 6. This wasn't just happening in Minnesota. Nope. Federal agents hit Swift plants all at the same time in Colorado, Nebraska, Texas, Utah, and Iowa. A huge, coordinated effort. And the total number of people arrested across all those places? 1,297. Yeah, almost 1,300 people, all rounded up in a single day. And that brings us back to Worthington. Here, the number was 239. Now think about that. In a town of just over 11,000 people, that is a staggering number. 239 of your neighbors, your friends, suddenly taken away. So you gotta ask, why? Why did this all happen? Well, it wasn't random. It was the result of a long, 10-month ICE investigation focused on identity theft. And here's where it gets complicated. Swift, the company, they'd actually been trying to follow the rules. They were using the government's own E-Verify program. But, and this is a big but, the system was flawed. It just couldn't catch certain kinds of fraud. It really shows you how tough it was for companies to navigate this super complex, pretty imperfect system. And here's a really critical detail. The raid was done with civil warrants to search the property, not criminal arrest warrants for specific people, which leads to this pretty wild fact. Out of all those 239 people detained in Worthington, only 20 ended up facing any criminal charges. The numbers, they tell one part of the story, right? But the human impact? That's a whole other chapter. In the hours and days that followed, Worthington was just a town in turmoil, absolutely consumed by fear and chaos. Just look at this photo. It captures the devastation on such a personal level. You see the babysitter, Amy Juarez, holding baby Hamilton. His mom, Catalina, was one of the workers arrested at the plant. And just like that, he was separated from her. He was just one of so many kids whose entire world was turned upside down in an instant. And yeah, baby Hamilton's story was heartbreaking, but it wasn't unique. Across town, you had kids waiting at school, waiting for parents who just never showed up. Can you even imagine that terror, that confusion? The fear just spread like wildfire through the whole community. So in the days after, that initial shock started to turn into something else. Protest. You had friends, family, neighbors, all gathering together, chanting, "Raza sí, migra no." It means the people, yes, immigration authorities, no. It really became this rallying cry against the fear that had just taken over their town. But here's the other side of that coin. While there was so much fear, there was also this incredible wave of compassion. Local churches, they immediately opened their doors, becoming sanctuaries. People from every part of the community just stepped up. Volunteers got organized, and get this, they collected and unloaded more than 7 tons of donations for the families who were affected. Just an absolutely powerful display of people coming together. Okay, so beyond the immediate chaos on the ground, the people who were detained, they were suddenly facing a brand new, terrifying challenge: navigating a super complex and, frankly, often unforgiving legal system. So, what happens next? Once you're arrested in a situation like this, what do you actually face? Well, they get put into something called removal proceedings. Basically, this is the official legal process the government uses when it wants to deport a non-citizen. And it's so important to understand this. It is a civil process, not a criminal one. That means the rules, the rights, everything is totally different from what you'd see on a TV crime drama. All right, so for some of these folks, the very first hurdle was just trying to get out on bond while their case is ongoing. But it's not automatic. A judge has to weigh a bunch of different factors. They're looking at things like, do you have family here? A steady job? Do you have a criminal record? How long have you lived in the US? They even look at whether you have a decent legal argument to stay in the country. So getting released was this really complicated case-by-case fight. So the raid itself, that was just one day. But its impact, man, its shadow stretched over Worthington for years and years, changing the town in ways nobody could have seen coming. So if we look at the timeline of what happened after, you can really see these long-term ripple effects. In 2007, the year after, Swift gets sold and a big lawsuit is filed against Homeland Security. Now, that lawsuit was eventually dismissed in 2009, but the organizing in the community, that didn't stop. Fast forward a decade to 2017, and new fears about immigration lead to a whole new network of advocates being formed. And then, and this is incredible, the very same networks of trust that were built out of the trauma of the 2006 raid, they became absolutely essential in helping the community organize its response to the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. So yeah, the raid was absolutely a source of huge trauma, no question. But it also forced these really difficult but necessary conversations. It actually broke down some barriers in the community, building these new, lasting alliances between faith groups, lawyers, and community leaders. And those connections, born out of a crisis, they really became a permanent part of the town's DNA. And all of this really leaves us with one big question. The story of Worthington is just such a powerful example of how a single event can send these ripples through time. It caused so much pain and division, for sure, but it also sparked this incredible resilience and unity. And it makes you wonder, right? How does one day, one single chaotic day, end up redefining the future of an entire community?